There is a sacred truth hidden in plain sight that governs the workings of this world. A truth few are willing to embrace because it demands both surrender and faith. That truth is this: when you grow spiritually, when you walk closer with God, when you rise above the noise and chaos of human deceit, God begins to move on your behalf, and karma becomes his servant to deal with those behind you. You may not see it immediately. In fact, the first stages of your spiritual growth are often marked not by applause, but by resistance. People begin to change. Friends fall away. Whispers grow louder behind your back. And you are left wondering, why? What have I done to deserve this? You gave love. You extended grace. You stood by others in their darkest hour, only to be repaid with betrayal, manipulation, and false accusation. Your heart has been bruised by the very hands you once trusted. Yet in this storm of pain, God speaks not with thunder, but with a whisper. Be still. I am working. What if the people who wronged you, the ones who mocked your faith, betrayed your trust, and plotted your downfall, were never beyond the reach of divine justice? What if their actions were not just personal attacks, but instruments of refinement for your soul? And what if, as you walked the narrow path of righteousness, God himself took up your cause? Not with vengeance, but with the quiet certainty of karmic law. Have you ever pondered the mystery of how those who harm others often end up ensnared in the very traps they set? Why those who lie are eventually exposed, and those who betray lose everything they thought they gained? This is no coincidence. It is the unfolding of a divine equation. As you ascend in spirit, God rearranges the universe to deal with those who try to hold you down. You don't need to fight back. You don't need to explain. Your growth is the proof, your peace is the testimony, and karma is the judge. The scriptures are clear. Do not be deceived. God is not mocked. A man reaps what he sows. This is not merely a moral principle, it is a law of life. And when your heart is aligned with God's will, when your thoughts are set on higher things, you are no longer bound by the chaos of those who dwell in darkness. You become light. And light exposes, heals, and transforms. The path of spiritual growth is not easy. It demands that you rise when others sink, that you forgive when you are wronged, that you speak truth when lies surround you, and in doing so you shift into a higher realm, a realm where God himself becomes your defender. You may never see the battle, but rest assured, he who sees in secret rewards in the open. Those who mocked you will wonder how you rose. Those who betrayed you will watch your table overflow, and those who tried to bury you will be buried under the weight of their own choices. Do you feel tired of carrying the weight of pain caused by others? Have you ever looked back and felt the sting of betrayal, the sharp ache of abandonment, or the wound of false friendship? Know this: God has not forgotten a single tear you shed in silence. Not a single injustice has escaped his notice. And in his time, not yours, he moves, he corrects, he balances. That is karma. Not as the world defines it, but as God's way of ensuring justice for the faithful. So do not be discouraged. Do not allow bitterness to corrupt your growth. Keep walking, keep rising, and let God be God. Let him deal with those behind you while you focus on the path ahead. For as surely as night follows day, karma follows wrongdoing, and grace follows obedience. Now, as we reflect on this divine reality, let us explore the clear signs that reveal the nature of toxic relationships. Relationships that hinder your spiritual growth and provoke the hand of God to act on your behalf. As you grow closer to God, people with hidden agendas are exposed. There is something mysterious and undeniable about the presence of God in a person's life. When your soul begins to align with divine truth, when your heart seeks purity and your thoughts are anchored in righteousness, a transformation takes place, not only within you, but around you. The light you carry, born from spiritual growth, disturbs the darkness that hides in the hearts of others. And suddenly, without effort or intention, people begin to reveal themselves. The very ones who clapped for you in public but secretly doubted you in private, now their actions no longer align with their words. Their support begins to wane. Their smiles become strained, and without warning, what was once concealed is brought to light. This is not a coincidence. It is divine exposure. As you draw nearer to God, His presence in your life becomes like a lamp in a dark room, illuminating what was once hidden. God, in His mercy, refuses to allow His chosen ones to remain surrounded by falsehood. He allows the masks to slip, the true intentions to be unveiled, and the deceptions to crumble. It is His way of protecting you, of separating the wheat from the chaff, of ensuring that those who walk with you are not secretly working against you. Think about it. How many times have you felt confusion in your spirit about someone close to you? You couldn't explain it, but something felt off. As you began to pray more, seek God's guidance, and focus on your spiritual walk, suddenly that person's behavior shifted. The one who once cheered you on now gossips behind your back. The one who promised loyalty now betrays your trust. This is not to hurt you, but to awaken you. God is showing you who is real and who is merely playing a role. There is a great cost to spiritual growth. It is not only about personal transformation, it's about relational refinement. You cannot carry dead weight into the next season of your life, and so God begins to shake your circle. He begins to disturb the comfort zones you have built with people who no longer belong in your destiny. And in this shaking, truths come to the surface. Some will envy your peace. Some will resent your progress. Others will hate the light in you because it exposes the darkness in them. When you were still, they loved you. When you were silent, they tolerated you. But now that you are growing, now that you are seeking God, they cannot hide. Your presence becomes uncomfortable, your words too convicting, your peace too loud, and so they react, not always with violence or confrontation, but with distance, coldness, and passive attacks meant to unsettle you. Understand this clearly. The more spiritually aligned you become, the more spiritually misaligned people will be repelled. It is not personal, it is spiritual. They are uncomfortable because your growth demands that they change, and many are not willing to confront their own stagnation. They preferred you broken. They preferred you needy. They preferred you silent. But now God is raising you, and in that elevation their masks are falling. This exposure is painful. It often leaves you wondering if you ever truly knew the people around you. But pain is the purifier of purpose. And God, in His wisdom, allows the exposure not to destroy you, but to prepare you. You cannot carry hidden enemies into divine appointments. You cannot build your future on the false foundation of deception. And so, as you grow, God purges. The exposure is His mercy. The revelation is His protection. Let it happen. Let the truth come out. Let those with hidden agendas fall away, not by your hand, but by His. For the path ahead is sacred, and only those with clean hands and pure hearts can walk it beside you. God removes people who cannot go where you are going. There are journeys in life that cannot be made in the company of everyone. Some roads are meant to be walked alone, not out of isolation, but because of purpose. As you grow spiritually, as your life begins to align with a higher calling, God begins a process of divine separation. It is not something you choose, nor something you expect. It often feels like loss. It feels like abandonment. But in truth, it is a necessary transition, a heavenly hand repositioning your life, removing people who simply cannot go where you are going. There are people in your life who were only meant to walk with you for a season. They served a purpose. They taught lessons. They provided companionship for a time. But the mistake many of us make is assuming that seasonal people should have permanent places in our lives. We hold on, we cling, and we try to carry people into places that God never intended for them to enter. And when we do that, we hinder our own growth. We delay our own progress. We risk our calling for the sake of comfort. But God in His wisdom sees what we cannot. He knows the hearts of men. He knows who is for us and who is secretly against us. He knows who will support us in the future and who will become a burden too heavy to carry. So when He begins to elevate you spiritually, He also begins to remove those who would hinder that elevation. It may come suddenly, through conflict or distance. It may come quietly, through changing circumstances, but the result is always the same. God clears your path for what He is about to do next in your life. There is a powerful truth that we often resist. Not everyone can handle your growth. Some people were comfortable when you were broken, when you were struggling, when you needed them. But now that you are healing, now that you are rising, now that you are stepping into your purpose, their hearts change. They feel threatened. They feel envious. They feel left behind. And instead of celebrating your growth, they attempt to hold you back, to remind you of who you were, to keep you tethered to the past. God sees the danger in this. He knows that if they remain in your life, they will distract you, drain you, and pull you off course. So He intervenes. He disrupts the connection. He allows the relationship to crumble, not to hurt you, but to protect you. Because where you are going, the destiny God has prepared for you requires focus, strength, and a circle that aligns with your vision. Letting go is painful. It often feels like betrayal or failure. You wonder why people you trusted are no longer present, why relationships you valued have ended. But in these moments you must remember, God's removal is not rejection, it is redirection. He is not taking from you, He is making room for something greater. He is ensuring that the voices around you will speak life, not death. That the people walking beside you will lift you, not burden you. That your future will not be built on fragile foundations. God removes people for your protection, your preparation, and your promotion. It is a holy separation, designed to bring clarity to your mission and strength to your journey. The absence of certain individuals is not a curse. It is evidence that you are stepping into a new season, and not everyone is qualified to enter it with you. Karma is God's way of restoring balance in your life. There is a divine order to the universe, a sacred balance that cannot be violated without consequence. Every thought, every action, every intention carries weight in the unseen realm, and nothing escapes the eyes of God. When someone chooses to hurt you, betray you, or dishonor you, they are not simply wounding a person. They are violating a law, a spiritual law that demands balance. And that balance is restored not through human vengeance, but through the hand of God. This is what many call karma, but it is more than a mere idea. It is a reflection of divine justice at work. In moments of betrayal, your first instinct may be to retaliate, to speak out, to defend yourself. But God calls you to a higher response. He asks you to release, to forgive, to walk away, not because the offense was small, but because He has already set in motion a process that will balance the scales. Karma is not about punishment for the sake of pain. It is about restoration. It is about ensuring that the damage inflicted upon you does not go unanswered. It is about returning to each person what they have sown, not out of wrath, but out of righteousness. Have you ever watched as someone who hurt you began to experience struggles they once wished upon you? Have you noticed the peace they tried to destroy in your life slowly vanish from theirs? This is not coincidence. It is not your doing. It is the natural order of divine justice moving silently but surely. God does not need your help to avenge the wrongs against you. He has designed the universe in such a way that evil cannot thrive unchecked and righteousness cannot go unrewarded. Karma is God's way of restoring balance, not only for you, but for the person who caused harm. Because in facing the consequences of their actions, they are given an opportunity to reflect, to change, to see the error of their ways. It is a mercy for them, even as it is justice for you. And for you, it is a release, a lifting of the burden to carry the weight of offense. You are free, not because they apologized, but because God has taken over. He has stepped in as judge, and his judgments are always true. When you grow spiritually, your energy changes. Your life is no longer governed by the chaos of others, but by the peace of God within you. And in that peace, you begin to witness karma at work, not as a weapon of revenge, but as a force of correction. The same people who spoke against you are silenced by their own downfall. The same people who tried to hinder you are now hindered themselves. And you, without raising your hand or lifting your voice, become a witness to how God balances all things in his perfect time. It is not your role to make others pay for what they did. Your role is to grow, to rise, to walk in righteousness. And as you do, the universe responds. The seeds of deceit, cruelty, and manipulation that others planted against you begin to bear fruit in their own lives. This is the law of sowing and reaping, written into the very fabric of creation. And when you align with God's will, you are no longer responsible for judgment. He takes it upon himself, and karma becomes his tool to restore balance and bring peace to your life. Your growth becomes their conviction. There is a peculiar weight that spiritual growth carries, not just for you, but for those around you. As you rise, as your spirit matures, your life begins to reflect something that unsettles others. Not because you are doing them harm, but because your transformation holds up a mirror to their stagnation. Your growth becomes their conviction. Without speaking a word, your presence challenges the very foundation of who they are. The peace you carry agitates the chaos within them. The progress you make reminds them of the effort they refused to give. And the joy you now walk in exposes the emptiness they tried to hide. When you were broken, they felt superior. When you were lost, they offered you shallow guidance, not to uplift, but to control. When you struggled, they felt needed, but now that you are whole, now that you walk with clarity and confidence, their hold over you is gone, and it leaves them feeling powerless. They cannot celebrate your victory because it silently accuses them of their failure, not because you judge them, but because your very existence as a testimony to God's grace confronts them with what they could have become, but chose not to. This is the nature of spiritual growth. It not only elevates you, it convicts those who refuse to grow with you. Your discipline rebukes their laziness. Your integrity confronts their deceit. Your faith exposes their doubt. They begin to view you not as a friend, but as a threat. Not because you've done wrong, but because your elevation unsettles their comfort. You have become a living witness, and witnesses are dangerous to those who dwell in darkness. They may never admit it, but deep within, they feel the weight of their choices every time they see you thrive. The lies they told, the harm they inflicted, the moments they mocked you, now haunt them, not through your words, but through your transformation. Every step you take forward is a reminder of how they tried to keep you down, and every blessing you receive becomes a sign of their failure to stop you. They cannot escape the consequences because karma does not only bring external circumstances, it brings internal unrest. A restless heart, a guilty mind, a soul that cannot find peace. They may try to discredit you, minimize your growth, or twist your success into arrogance. But even in their denial, they know. Deep down, they know that you are not who you used to be, and that truth alone is a judgment upon them. Your life, your calm, your resilience, it all becomes a silent verdict. And in that silence, they hear the echoes of every wrong they committed. You did not need to retaliate. You did not need to argue or prove anything. Your growth did all the talking, and God, in His wisdom, chose to exalt you before the very people who wished to see you fall. Not to gloat, but to reveal. Not to shame, but to convict. Because your elevation is not just a reward. It is a divine mirror reflecting both the grace of God upon you and the justice of God toward those behind you. Letting go allows God to work. There is a heavy burden that comes with being wronged, a burden of anger, confusion, and the desire for justice. You want to understand why it happened. You want to confront the person who hurt you, to make them see the damage they caused, to force them to acknowledge your pain. And yet, in the depth of your spirit, God whispers something that feels impossible. Let go. Not because your pain is invalid, not because justice is unimportant, but because letting go is the key that releases God's hand to work on your behalf. As long as you hold on, clenching your fists around the offense, replaying the betrayal, carrying the bitterness, you are trapped in a cycle that drains your energy and clouds your mind. You become consumed by the wrong, unable to move forward, unable to rise. But letting go is not surrendering to injustice. It is surrendering to God's higher wisdom. It is saying, I trust you more than I trust my own understanding. I trust you to deal with them while I heal with you. Letting go does not mean forgetting. It means you no longer allow the wound to control you. It means you stop waiting for an apology that may never come, and you stop trying to fix people who chose to break you. When you release the offense, you make room for God to step in, not only to bring peace to your soul, but to bring justice in His perfect timing. You are no longer blocking His work with your desire for control. Many people think holding on gives them power to remember, power to punish. But in truth, holding on is bondage. It ties your spirit to people who were never meant to have that kind of control over you. It ties your destiny to the weight of resentment. Letting go is freedom. It is the declaration that you refuse to be defined by what was done to you. You choose to be defined by what God is doing in you. And here is the mystery. When you let go, God moves. The karmic law set in motion does not require your interference. God does not need your help to bring balance. He simply needs your trust. Letting go is the ultimate act of faith. It is saying, God, I believe you see all. I believe you remember all. I believe you will handle all. And in that faith, the universe responds. The seeds sown by others, whether deceit, betrayal, or harm, begin to sprout their own consequences, not by your hand, but by God's. Letting go allows your heart to heal. It allows your mind to focus on purpose, not pain. It lifts the fog that has clouded your spirit. You begin to see with clarity, to walk with strength, to live in peace. And while you move forward, those who wronged you remain entangled in the mess they created. That is karma at work. That is divine justice unfolding without your interference, without your bitterness, without your energy wasted on things that cannot be changed. It is one of the greatest tests of spiritual growth, to release and trust, to step back and allow God to be the one who rights the wrongs. But when you do, when you truly let go, you step into a freedom so powerful that nothing and no one can hold you back. You are no longer a prisoner of your past. You are a vessel of peace, carried by the assurance that God's justice is always at work, and karma will handle what your heart no longer has to carry. There is a sacred strength in silence, a divine power in holding your peace when chaos surrounds you. In a world that demands retaliation, where every offense seems to beg for a response, silence becomes an act of courage, of discipline, and most importantly, of faith. When you chose not to respond to the mockery, not to defend yourself against the lies, not to lower yourself to the level of those who ridiculed your pain, you did something remarkable in the eyes of God. You showed restraint not out of weakness, but out of trust. Trust that God would speak where you remained silent, and that He would act where you chose stillness. Staying silent in the face of mockery is one of the most difficult things to do, especially when the people mocking you once claimed to love and support you. The sting of betrayal is sharp, and when that betrayal is followed by public shame or private slander, every fiber of your being may cry out for justice, for explanation, for the chance to be heard. But something in your soul tells you to be still, to wait, to trust that God sees the injustice and is not indifferent to your suffering. They mocked your faith, they questioned your worth, they spoke ill of your intentions and took pleasure in your setbacks. Some laughed behind your back, others doubted your potential, and still you remained silent. Not because you didn't have words, but because you knew your words would not change hardened hearts. You knew that defending yourself would only entangle you deeper in their web of deceit. So you chose the higher path, the harder path, the path of silence. And that silence was not in vain. In that silence, God was working. In that silence, He was preparing your reward. Because every time you resisted the urge to retaliate, every time you bit your tongue instead of speaking out in anger, every time you walked away instead of fighting back, you were storing up favor, grace, and justice in heaven. Your silence became your testimony, your restraint became your offering, and God took notice. There is a reason Scripture says, "The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." Stillness is not inaction, it is the highest form of action. A declaration that you trust God more than your emotions. And in that trust, you gain access to a realm of reward that cannot be earned through striving, arguing, or fighting. It is a reward reserved for those who choose humility over pride, peace over chaos, and silence over noise. What many fail to see is that mockery is a reflection of the mocker, not the mocked. Their words reveal their character, their emptiness, their fear. When they mocked you, they were really trying to distract from their own inadequacies. When they laughed at your struggles, they were masking their own failures. And now, as you grow in silence, as you rise without explanation, God is exalting you before the very ones who tried to tear you down. There is a profound beauty in watching how God flips the narrative. Those who once whispered about your pain are now speechless at your peace. Those who tried to break your spirit are now witnessing the strength you've gained. Your silence spoke louder than their insults, and your endurance became a weapon they could not defeat. You did not need to raise your voice, because God raised your life as proof of His faithfulness. And while you stayed silent, karma moved. The very people who mocked you began to experience the weight of their own words. Their lives, once seemingly untouched, started to reveal cracks. The peace they once boasted about became fractured. Their plans began to fail, and you watched. Not with glee, not with revenge in your heart, but with the solemn awareness that divine justice was unfolding, not by your hand, but by the hand of the one who promised to repay. Your silence was your strength. It shielded you from further harm. It protected your energy. It allowed God to work without interference. And in that silence, you were rewarded, not just with outward success, but with inward peace, the kind of peace that cannot be shaken by the noise of the world. You were rewarded with clarity, with spiritual power, with the unshakable knowledge that God vindicates His own in ways that leave no doubt as to who is truly in control. There are times in life when words are not enough, when explanations fall flat, when justifications are ignored, and when apologies are never spoken. In these moments, God does something profound. He elevates you not only for your sake, but to teach a lesson to those who sought your downfall. Your rise becomes more than a blessing, it becomes a living testimony, a powerful display of divine justice, and a humbling lesson for those who once mocked, doubted, and betrayed you. Elevation is not always about material gain. Sometimes it's the peace you now carry, the wisdom etched in your spirit, the clarity of your purpose, and the strength of your soul that marks your promotion. Those who once took your kindness for weakness now see that God has not only preserved you, He has strengthened and exalted you, and they are left to witness in silence the fruit of their own actions, their betrayal, their dishonor, their schemes, all crumbling under the weight of their consequences. Have you ever noticed how God doesn't always confront your enemies with loud judgment? He does something far more impactful. He makes them watch you thrive. He prepares a table before you in their presence, and in that moment your elevation becomes their reckoning, not because you desired it, but because divine justice demands it. The very ones who wished for your failure are forced to witness your growth, and they cannot deny what God has done. There is no louder message than transformation. The person they tried to break has become unbreakable. The one they underestimated has now surpassed every expectation. The life they tried to diminish now radiates purpose and strength. This is how God turns pain into power, how He uses what was meant for evil and makes it a platform for your blessing and a lesson for those who caused the pain. Their lesson is not taught through your anger or vengeance. It is taught through your resilience. It is taught through your refusal to quit, your ability to forgive, and your choice to keep walking despite the wounds. And as you rise, as your life becomes a symbol of redemption, they are left to reflect on what they did, not because you forced them to, but because your elevation makes silence impossible. Elevation exposes. It reveals who truly supported you and who only stayed for convenience. It shows who celebrated your growth and who quietly resented it. And in this exposure, God is not only elevating you, He is teaching them. He is teaching them that integrity matters, that faithfulness is seen, that kindness is not weakness. He is teaching them that every action has consequences, and that when you touch the life of someone under God's protection, you do not go unchallenged. They may try to dismiss your success. They may minimize your achievements, but they cannot escape the reality that God has favored you, and that their efforts to destroy you have only propelled you forward. Your elevation forces them to face a truth they wanted to avoid, that no one can curse what God has blessed, and no human hand can hinder what heaven has ordained. There is a weight to watching someone you once hurt rise higher than you ever imagined. There is a silent torment in realizing that your own actions disqualified you from sharing in their success. This is karma, not as petty revenge, but as divine correction. They are not only seeing your growth, they are seeing what they lost, what they forfeited, what they can no longer access because of their choices. You didn't seek to teach them a lesson, but God, in His sovereignty, has turned your elevation into a mirror, and in that mirror they see the cost of dishonor. They see that every betrayal has a price. They see that loyalty would have given them a seat at your table, but now they must watch from a distance, not because you closed the door, but because their actions barred them from entering. Your elevation is not just your victory, it is their awakening. It is the moment when all their words, all their lies, all their attempts to keep you down collapse under the truth of who you've become. You are not who you were, and their power over you is gone. What remains is a clear, undeniable reality that God has lifted you up, and in doing so, He has used your life as both an inspiration for others and a sobering lesson for those behind you. Now that you have walked through this truth, now that your eyes have been opened to the divine order that governs your life, you must never again doubt the power of spiritual growth, nor the justice of God. When you grow spiritually, God uses karma to deal with those behind you, not to satisfy your ego, but to protect your purpose. He exposes hidden agendas, removes people who cannot go where you're destined, and restores balance through consequences only He can orchestrate. Your growth becomes a silent force, convicting those who once mocked you, unsettling those who betrayed you, and liberating you from the burden of retaliation. Letting go allowed God to work, and your silence became your strength. And now, your elevation is undeniable, a testimony that what was meant to destroy you became the very tool God used to lift you higher. Let this be your peace. You don't have to fight for justice. You don't have to chase closure. God has already begun the work. Trust His timing. Trust His process. Let karma serve its purpose as His divine instrument. While they reap what they have sown, you walk in grace, in power, in freedom. And as you rise, never forget, your success is not only a blessing, it is a lesson that no one can hinder God's chosen, a lesson that pain has a purpose, and that purpose always leads to elevation. Let your life continue to shine as evidence that God defends, God restores, and God repays. Stand tall, stay humble, and keep moving forward. God is not done with you yet.